welcome අයිබෝන්. This lesson is going to focus on the adverbial clause, mainly if, right? So, now before we were having a look at the other different adverbial clauses like since, because, though, even though, although, right? But this lesson is going to focus all about if. The adverbial clause beginning with if is used to show the condition for the action or the event in the main clause, right? When the condition is fairly likely, right? So if there is a probability of that happening, then we use the simple present tense or the present perfect tense if the adverbial clause is beginning with if, right? Now, what this first bit tells you that if your adverbial clause is beginning with if, that is used to show the condition for the action, right? So that means she can do it, but what is the condition? If she has worked hard. Oops, let me just draw it. If she has worked hard. So your main event, right, or the event in the main clause would happen if this condition is completed. Okay? And then there's another part to it. If the adverbial clause begins with if, and it is most likely or fairly likely to happen, then you would use the simple present tense or the present perfect tense. Now, the simple present tense, if you can remember, was the S form, right? And the base form. If it is present perfect, has plus the past participle or have plus the past participle. So this one here, she can do it if she has worked hard, right? So if the condition of working hard will be completed, then of course she can do it. That is what it tells you. The adverbial clause beginning with if is used to show the condition for the action or the event in the main clause. That word condition is very important, right? She can do it. What's the condition? If she has worked hard. Now, because this is fairly likely to happen, you can say she can do it if she has worked hard. Or you could use the sentence structure, she can do it if she works hard. Okay? So you could also use the simple present tense. Model plus the base form of the verb, right? So can is your model plus the base form of the verb comes towards the main clause. And then here the present perfect tense states the condition, or you could even use it as the present tense states the condition, right? The present tense also states the condition, right? Let's have a look at the next rule. When the condition is unlikely or impossible, the simple past tense is used, right? With the adverbial clause beginning with if. In the main clause, would, should, could or might plus the base form of the verb is used, right? Now, in this one, right, there are a few changes. So, carefully observe this because this is a bit complicated. Actually, not complicated. There's a few points here that you need to carefully remember, right? Now, in this one, right, I told you, right, if the adverbial clause is beginning with if, right, this condition has to be completed. It shows the condition of the main clause. And then if it is fairly likely to happen, you can use the simple present tense or the present perfect. In this, the main clause structure is the model plus the base form of the verb. But if the condition is unlikely or impossible to happen, then the simple past tense is used in the adverbial clause beginning with if. In the main clause, you have would, or you can have here should, or you can have here could, or you can have here might. Okay, plus the base form of the verb, right? So now if it is unlikely to happen, then you have the simple past tense if the adverbial clause is beginning with if. In the main clause, you could have would, you could have should, you could have could, and you could have might plus the base form of the verb. He would buy a house if he had a lot of money. It's very unlikely. Okay, like I would say, I would buy an apartment if I had a lot of money. It's very unlikely that I would have a lot of money, obviously, right? So buying that would be unlikely or impossible, right? You could come up with another example, right? She might buy a car if she had a lot of money. So here you have the model plus the base form of the verb, right? And this bit is your main clause. What is your adverbial clause? If. And when it is beginning with if it is unlikely to happen, then you have it in the simple past tense. That indicates that this is unlikely to happen, right? The next one. If the condition is unlikely or impossible, were is used instead of was in an adverbial clause beginning with if when the subject is I. So what it means, if let's think of an example like this. The sentence starts with I, okay, and the probability is very less that it's going to happen. It's unlikely, it's impossible. Then in the adverbial clause, instead of was, because you say I was, no? You don't say I were. But in the adverbial clause, was is replaced with were. Let us have a look at an example. I would buy a lovely car if I were a millionaire. So you don't put if I was a millionaire. If it is unlikely to happen, if the adverbial clause is beginning with if and there's I, then you can put were. I would take the risk if I were you. Right? Let's have a look at the next condition. When the condition could have happened but did not happen, right? It could have happened but it didn't happen. Could have happened but did not happen. The past perfect tense is used in the adverbial clause beginning with if. The main clause would have, should have, could have, might have, plus the past participle of the verb is used. Let's see what I mean by that. So here, this condition could have happened, but it didn't happen, right? Dad might have agreed if we insisted, right? So the actual thing is it could have happened, but it actually didn't happen, right? And then we use the past perfect tense. Had insisted. Had plus the past participle. The main clause should have, might have, could have, should have, would have, plus the past participle. So it could be any of those, right? Not just might have, right? You could say could have, plus the past participle, would have, plus the past participle, should have, plus the past participle could be written, right? All right. Let's have a look at some of the sentences, right? Why is B correct and why is A wrong? He can do the exam well if he done well. He can do the exam well if he has practiced well. Okay. Now what you have to remember is this is likely to happen, right? So if it is likely to happen, then you could use the present tense or you can use the present perfect tense, and the model plus the base form should be there in the main clause. So this bit here is the main clause. This is the main clause and this is the main clause. Seems fine. The main clause is fine because you have the model plus the base form of the verb. If he will done well, if he has practiced well, okay? So what you have to remember is that the tense could be present tense or present perfect if it is likely to happen. So will is in the future, therefore we can't take it. So B is correct, okay? Second one, why is 2B correct? Why is 2A wrong? Mommy would panic if a gecko falls on her body. Mommy would panic if a gecko fell on her body, right? Now, what is that rule? Come back here, right? This one here. Okay. if the condition is unlikely or impossible to happen, you use the simple past tense with would, should, could or might. Okay, so coming to this, main clause is this bit. Mummy would panic. That bit is fine. If a gecko falls on a body, I mean a gecko falling on your body, does it usually happen? Is it likely? It's unlikely to happen, right? If it is unlikely to happen, then we use the which tense? The past tense, right? So here falls is present tense. Therefore, it is wrong. You use the past tense for unlikely things to happen. Therefore, if a gecko fell on her body, and that is correct. Next one. They could have rescued us if we called them. They could have rescued us if we had called them. Now, this is something that could have happened but did not happen. Okay? So, let's have a look at the main clause. It's this bit. They could have rescued us is the main clause, right? So they could have rescued us if we called them. If we had called them. The rule is if it was likely to happen, right? It could have happened, but it did not happen, right? Then you use the past perfect tense. Let me show you the rule again. This one here. You could have, would have, should have, might have, right? Plus the past participle in the main clause. However, it could have happened but did not happen, then the past perfect tense is used. So coming here, it could have happened but it didn't happen, right? So therefore we have the past perfect tense along with could have plus the past participle. That's fine. So 3B is correct, 3A is wrong. Right, so let us have a look at the activity here. Underline the correct word to complete the sentences. So here you have to select which one is the correct one. Now you can jot down the answers in your notebook, right? Mum will respect my decision if I have considered all the options. Okay? So which one do you think? When do you use the past tense? When it is unlikely. But this is highly likely that mum will respect my decision when? If I have considered all the options. So this is like the first one, likely to happen. So you could use the present tense or the present perfect tense. Same way, please have a look at these sentences, right? They would defend her if she had been accused. They would have defended her if she had been accused. Now, if it is something what? It could have happened but it didn't happen. She had been, if she had been accused. So that is like the past perfect tense, right? Then what should be your main clause? So this bit is your main clause, right? They would have defended her. This is starting the main clause. It finishes from here. So if it is something that could have happened but it didn't happen, then your main clause should have, would have, should have, could have or might have plus the past participle, right? Could have defended. So the same way, think about the rules that I taught you before you select the answer. He might still reject her if she offers him a gift. You can use my laptop if you like or liked. The poison would have made her dizzy if she had taken it, if she took it. Okay? I could not bring myself to do that if I were you. You'll regret it if you betray us, if you will betray us. I would write a poem to her if I is a poet, if I were a poet. The herbs would have grown well if you had taken care of them. Certainly she could do better if she uses her brain. Alright? So think about what are the proper answers and jot them down in your notebook. Alright, so I'm thinking that you would have finished it. So let's have a look at the answers. He might still reject her if she offered him the gift, right? So this is something likely or unlikely. Think about it. He might still reject her, okay? If she offered him the gift, if she offers him the gift, okay? So something very unlikely to happen. If it is unlikely to happen, then you would use the simple past tense. So he might still reject her if she offered him the gift. You can use my laptop. Something very likely to happen, right? You can use my laptop if you like, right? You can use the simple present tense or you can use the present perfect tense. The poison would have made her dizzy. Now, this is something that could have happened but did not happen. So, the poison would have made her dizzy if she had taken it or if she took it. So which one is it? If she had taken it, right? So the condition could have happened but it actually did not happen. So you use the present perfect tense, right? So the poison would have made her dizzy. Could have happened, right? If she had taken it, okay? If she had took it or if she had taken it. So the correct answer is if she had taken it, okay? Next one. I could not bring myself to do it if I were you. I could not bring myself to do it if I were you. Now this is the I were rule, okay? So what does it tell you here? Oops. This one here. When the condition is unlikely or impossible, were is used with was. Okay. Were is used, instead of was when the adverbial clause is beginning with if and the subject is I, right? So would plus the base form of the verb. Would, should, could, that could come up, right? So, I cannot, I could not. You have to write I could not because you have to use could, should, would or might, right? You'll regret it if you betray us. Very likely to happen. I would write a poem, okay, if I were a poet. Same rule, if I were. The herbs would have grew, the herbs would have grown. Would have grown, well, if you had taken care of them, right? Something that could have happened but did not happen, right? So the herbs would have grown well. Next one, certainly she can do better if she uses her brain. Certainly she could do better. Okay, so can do better if she uses her brain. Okay, all right, so coming to the next activity, tick the correct sentences. There are some sentences here which are incorrect as well. Tick the ones which are only correct. So in your context, what you could do is jot down the answers of the correct sentences, right? She would live differently if she can turn back clock. Okay, so would live differently if she can turn back clock. She must be Tina's twin if she looks identical. Okay, must be Tina's twin if she looks identical. They would invest in my company, right? Would invest in my company if they had known about the benefits. My sister will make a great politician if she is a lawyer. He might not notice any difference if the sun rose in the west. Next one. We would have cheated at the exam if we had a chance. You ought to be more caring if you wish to be a parent. Okay? If you wish to be a parent. Gareth may still love you if you turned into a monster. My friend can sleep in our guest room if she had nowhere else to spend the night. If she had nowhere can sleep. My brother's talent might have improved if someone had helped him. So looking at these sentence structures, which ones do you think are the correct sentences? If you need more time, as I always tell you, please go back, pause the video and jot down the answers before we discuss. Alright, so I hope you would have completed the answers by now. Let's have a look at the answers. So in the first one, anyway, there is something missing. Your article the is missing here. So it's anyway wrong. She must be Tina's twin if she looks identical. I think that's fine. Okay, something very likely to happen. So the present tense is used. That's fine. They would invest in my company, right? If they had known about the benefits. Okay, so obviously, if someone wants to invest, right, they would invest in my company if they know about the benefits. Something very likely to happen. So if they had known about it, does not fit in. So therefore, it is wrong, right? And they would invest in my company if they had known about it. So if they had known about it means which one? This one here. Could have happened but did not happen. It should be the past perfect tense, right? So, but here the idea is completely wrong in the tense, in the sentence, right? So therefore, that sentence is wrong again. My sister will make a great politician if she is a lawyer, right? So again, if it is something very likely to happen, okay, which one do you use? Or if it's something very unlikely to happen, which one would you use? Think about that. Yeah, if you had thought about it, then this one is wrong. He might not notice any difference if the sun rose in the west. Yes, that's perfectly fine. Right? Moving on, we would have cheated at the exam if we had a chance. Again, perfectly fine. Okay. You ought to be more caring if you wish to be a parent. Again, that's fine, right? So something highly possible to happen, so the tenses are all okay. Gareth may still love you if you turn into a monster. No, that's completely wrong. Can sleep in our guest room if she had nowhere to sleep. Wrong. Highly likely if she has nowhere. Okay, so again the tense is wrong. My brother's talent might have improved if someone had helped him. Yes, it could have happened, but it didn't actually happen. Then might have plus the past participle, and then in the if adverbial clause, it must be in the past perfect tense. So 10 is also correct. Let us have a look at the next activity. Circle the correct sentence, right? So that means here you have A, B, C. Circle the correct letter or the letters of the sentence or sentences, right? We will disagree if we will hear about it. We will disagree if we hear about it. We would disagree if we heard about it. Next one. Her little act would have been cute if she had been a child. Her little act would be cute if she was a child. Her little act would be cute if she is a child. Think about the rules. He can stop attending if he has learned enough. He can stop attending if he is bored. He can stop attending if he has a good reason. Next one, Bonnie could keep going if Buffy had supported her. Bunny could have kept going if Buffy had supported her. Bunny can keep going if Buffy supports her. Number 5. These days might be dull if everything was fulfilled. These days might be dull if everything had been fulfilled. These days might be dull if everything is fulfilled. Alright, so let us have a look at the answers. Now I'm assuming that by now you understand the rule, and now we could just have a look at the answers very quickly at this part, right? We will disagree if we will hear about it. We will disagree if we hear about it. We would disagree if we heard about it. So this is sometimes you could take this like a very likely thing to happen or an unlikely thing to happen, okay? So we will disagree, probably yes, could be a possible way. Sometimes it could be highly unlikely as well. If we hear or if we heard. We will hear, not really. Okay, so B and C are probable answers. Next one. Her little act would have been cute if she had been a child. So this could have happened, but it did not happen. Okay, so A seems correct. Her little act would be cute if she was a child. So this is something unlikely to happen, because if she was a child, then it would have been cute, yes. Her little act would be cute if she is a child. I mean, is that something likely? If she is a child, not really. So there is no meaning to the third one, therefore it is wrong. Question number 3. He can stop attending if he has learnt enough. He can stop attending if he is bored. He can stop attending if he has a good reason. I think all 3 of them are fine, right? So A, B and C are correct. Question number 4. Bunny could keep going if Buffy had supported. Okay. So I think if you had supported, this should have been could have. So plus the past participle, right? So B is correct. Bunny could have kept going if Buffy had supported her. Bunny can keep going if Buffy supports her. Okay, so not support her, so B is correct. Number 5. These days might be dull if everything was fulfilled. Okay, so this is something unlikely to happen. So if everything was fulfilled, A seems okay. If everything had been fulfilled, then might be dull is incorrect. Might be dull if everything is fulfilled. It's not something likely to happen, fulfilled and then the days being dull. So A is only the correct answer. Right, so moving on into the next one. Fill the blanks with the suitable words in the box. Each word may be used more than once, right? Passes are, can't, had, hang, stands, will, abated, were, couldn't, have, stayed, stood, would. Okay. I could have introduced you to Mr. Paris if you attend the party. Which one do you think? Okay. Could have introduced. It could have happened, but it didn't happen. So then, could have introduced you to Mr. Paris if you had what? Attended the party. Okay, it should be attended the party. We would not notice her if she blank on his head. They shall leave tonight if the storm blank. She might have surely blank around if you had loved her. The dog's barking may keep you awake if you blank not used to it. Next one. She would blank basked in the limelight if she had been there. We blank forget him if we tried for 100 years. Mom can't do anything if my sister blank made up her mind. He would have blank great success if you had entered to law school. Everyone blank pleased if Bella accepts the nomination, right? So think about how these verbs can change and how can you fit them into the gaps, all right? So as I always tell you, don't be in a rush to do it. Take your time, pause the video and go through the questions carefully and mark the answers or jot down the answers in your notebooks. All right? All right, so let's have a look at the answers. We would not notice her if she stood on his head. Oops, let me just get a pen. If she stood on his head. They shall leave tonight if the storm passes. She might have surely stayed around if you had loved her. The dog's barking may keep you awake if you are not used to it. She would bask in the limelight if she had been there. She would have. We forget him if we tried for 100 years. We couldn't forget him. Mom can't do anything if my sister, we can't say have, so it needs to be changed, has made up her mind. He would have had great success if he had entered to law school. Everyone will be pleased if Bella accepts the nomination. All right, so let's have a look at the last activity for today. Right, so let us have a look at the last activity for this lesson. Underline the correct word in the bracket, right? So, you have to select the correct one and underline it. So for you, you could actually jot down the answer in your notebook. Please bear in mind that this is an extract from Grammar Builder 4. Dearest Farah, I'll graduate in May if all goes well. I couldn't come this far if you not urged me to keep trying. Indeed, my life have much less happy if you had up on me. Yes, you can come over here anytime if you able to get away. You couldn't be an inconvenience if you, what's the word? You might be a delightful distraction if you less bent on making me work. Don't worry. Should it be I or I'll? Be more motivated. Oops, it should be then. Right here, then. Ever if you pamper me a little. Right? So think what should be the correct word. I'll graduate in May if all goes well. I couldn't have come this far if you had not urged me to keep trying. Indeed, my life would have been much less happy if you had given up on me. Yes, you can come over here anytime if you are able to get away. You couldn't be an inconvenience if you tried. You might be a delightful distraction if you were less bent on making me work. Don't worry. I'll be more motivated than ever if you pamper me a little. Love, Kim. Right? So here are the answers. Now I haven't gone through one by one because now you understand. You should remember the rules when you're doing this. And then naturally, if you know it, the answers will just come by, right? So before I round off, I want you to quickly remember the rules and let me run through with you the rules, right? So the first one is, if an adverbial clause is beginning with if, it shows the condition of the main clause. So that means you can only do it if this is completed, if the condition is completed. Now, if the condition is likely to happen, then you can use the simple present tense or the present perfect tense for the adverbial clause, provided it begins with the word if. The next rule is, if it is unlikely or impossible to happen, then you can use the simple past tense in the adverbial clause if it is beginning with if. In the main clause, would, should, could or might can come up along with the base form of the verb, would, by. Then, if the condition is unlikely or impossible to happen, were could be used instead of was in the adverbial clause if there is I and the subject is I, right? And then the last condition that we learned was that when the condition could have happened but it didn't happen, then you use the past perfect tense in the adverbial clause if it is beginning with if. Then the main clause can have could have, would have, should have, might have, plus the past participle. So those are the main rules that we learned, and then of course we had a look at lots of activities. So with that, we have come to the end of the lesson, adverbial clauses with if.